And the time is 7 p.m.
There's a certain magic about words, and this includes words on a printed page. Somehow we look at symbolic groups of letters, and if we know how to decode them, they come to life with meaning in our minds. But here you see words being transposed into a different kind of code. It's paper tape being punched with holes. The perforated tape is punched on one machine and then used to actuate another machine. And this is only a small part of a large operation you'll observe in action tonight. You'll meet some of the people who work behind the scenes in a rapidly paced business with deadlines to meet nearly every hour of the day. Perhaps nowhere in the world is the daily flow of news more appreciated than in this country. A free press is one of our basic rights. So tonight, we're visiting a newspaper to see just how it's done. I'm Bill Nielsen, and this is Success Story.
Success Story, an on-the-spot live telecast brought to you each week from somewhere in the great Northwest as a public service by Richfield, makers of 100-plus boron super-octane gasoline, Richfield Rich Heat heating oils, and a complete line of years ahead petroleum products. Tonight, our Success Story cameras are in Longview, Washington, to bring you a live and direct tour through the plant of the Longview Daily News. The Daily News is an award-winning paper renowned throughout the Pacific Northwest for honest, energetic reporting and enterprising service, not only to Longview and Kelso, but to the entire lower Columbia River area, often referred to as the Evergreen Empire. The Longview Daily News is the only daily newspaper between Vancouver and Centralia. There are nearly 20,000 subscribers live in the area, bounded by the Cascade Range on the east to the Pacific Ocean on the west, and from central Lewis County to the north across the river to Columbia County in Oregon. Their newspaper plant is located on 12th and Broadway in Longview and has operated from this location since the fall of 1923. A daily newspaper has been published every weekday, 6 days a week, since the 2nd of April, 1923, the year Longview became a city. Since that time, the Daily News has grown steadily with the city of Longview and the region around it. Both the newspaper and the city had remarkable beginnings, Longview being created almost whole cloth from the ideas and plans of one man. This city was perhaps the first and certainly the largest planned city since Washington, D.C. was designed and laid out in 1792. R.A. Long, president of the Long Bell Lumber Company, was 68 years old when he became an inseparable part of Pacific Northwest history. Longview's history began in 1920 when the Kansas City Company purchased nearly 70,000 acres of virgin forest in Washington. In 1922, the independent city of Longview was founded because the Long Bell mills had to be on the main channel of the Columbia River, and the mill workers had to have a good place to live close by. By the end of 1922, 14,000 acres had been diked and city streets and sidewalks graded and paved. Early in 1923, John M. McClelland took over the publication of a daily newspaper. In April of that year, he became the editor and publisher, and both the city and the paper have never ceased growing and expanding since that time. Mr. McClelland transferred the job of editing and publishing to his son, John McClelland, Jr., but remains active in the newspaper business as president of the Longview Daily News.
Well, Mr. McClelland, I would guess that Longview didn't look at all like it does today back in 1923.
Well, it couldn't have looked much different, I don't think. In those days, there was confusion and frustration. I sometimes cite the building of a couple of army cantonments as an example of what was happening then.
You've certainly come a long way since this initial building, which we see here. Obviously, you had a great deal of faith in the future of Longview when you came. Was there ever a time when that faith began to diminish at all?
Oh, no, I don't think so, Mr. Nielsen. Anyone who, as I did, had a knowledge of what was back of the foundation of this city. What we were endeavoring to do and what was ahead of us couldn't very well lose faith in it.
Being here from the very beginning involved you to quite a large degree in civic and community affairs, didn't it?
Yes, Mr. Nielsen, being in civic affairs in those days was must. As an example, I was the head of, served on the first city council, was head of the YMCA and the library and various other organizations of that type.
What one reason can you point out as the major one for the rapid expansion, the success of the organization?
Oh, I think perhaps having a knowledge of the thinking and hopes of the people that were constituting the community at that time. We, through our columns, endeavored to interpret that into their thinking, and from the beginning we sought to build a community rather than a strictly local newspaper, and it worked out to that end.
Thank you, Mr. McClellan.
A daily newspaper like the Longview Daily News is both a creative work of art as well as a mass-produced manufactured product. To turn out a 14 to 36-page newspaper every day takes many people with considerable talent, training, education, and the skill of craftsmen. The presses roll at 2 o'clock every weekday afternoon, so all areas, creative and craft alike, have deadlines to meet at some time before this. Every process is completed with as much speed as possible while still maintaining high printing standards. There are 8 linotype machines, and most of them are in constant use. 4 of them can be operated automatically by perforated ribbons of paper called teletypesetter tape. The reporter's copy is first punched on tape. This is a code for punctuation marks, spaces, and at least 2 sizes of alphabet letters. The code on the tape is read electronically and releases selected type molds called matrices, one at a time from individual magazines. This selection process continues until enough are selected to make up a line of type, including matrices for the spaces between words. The spaces are important because they come in different widths and can stretch a short line or shorten a long line as needed to fill a column width evenly down both sides. Comparing one line of type with another, you will see that a line can have as few as 25 letters or as many as 35, and yet both lines extend the full width of one column. The matrices for forming one line of type are then picked up by an elevator and taken to the casting mold. Molten type metal, which is a combination of lead, tin, and antimony, is forced against the matrices and sets almost instantly. The matrices are then picked up and distributed back to their proper magazines. The slug for one line of type then drops into a tray. This process continues, one step overlapping another, at about 8 lines a minute until the entire story is completely set in linotype slugs. They are then taken to a composing table called the bank. The slugs are placed in order in a tray called a galley. A proof is pulled simply by inking the typefaces and pressing a piece of newsprint over it. The galley proof is then taken to a proofreader who checks it for errors. The slugs with errors are taken out and new slugs made to replace them. The compositor selects the galleys and assembles them in page forms called chases. He follows a layout or page dummy as drawn up by one of the editors. The dummy designates the placings of stories and their headlines, the pictures and their captions, and all the advertisements. Once a chase is completely filled, it is locked up and a proof pulled for the entire page. The page proof is then checked to be certain that headlines are with the proper stories and pictures are captioned correctly. With page proof approved, the next step is the fabrication of a mat or mold for the entire page. The chase is covered with a layer of paper mache, just moist enough to capture a perfect impression of the type. The covered chase then goes into a heavy direct press called the mat roller, applying a pressure of 5,000 pounds a square inch.
What happens to a reporter's story after it's been typed is quite something to see, believe me. To fill us in briefly is Wilbur Kemper, the composing room foreman here. How long have you been with the paper, Wilbur?
24 years, Bill.
What jobs have you held?
Oh, just about everything.
I was watching that linotype operation a little while ago, and that looks like an extremely complicated machine.
Well, they are quite complicated, Bill, and yet they're designed for both speed and accuracy.
I know that you're faced with a great many changes, such as we are in the television business. Does the linotype handle those changes with dispatch?
Yes, they do, Bill.
Why do you make this paper mache mat after the type has already been set?
Bill, I think Rhodes Cox could give you a better answer to that question.
I believe Rhodes is working right over here behind us, isn't he? I'll step over. Thanks
All
very
right,
much,
Bill.
Wilbur. Rhodes, how are you tonight?
Oh, pretty good.
Tell us, why do you make this papier-mâché mat after the type has been set?
Well, we use it to transfer the image from these page forms to this cylinder right here.
The cylinder, then, is the plate from which the printing is done. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
How do you accomplish this transfer?
We take the mat out in the other room and trim it down to size and put it in the casting box and pour metal in it, and from there to the plate finishing machine where the ends are trimmed off in this board to the proper thickness.
This mat acts as a sort of a mold, then, does it not?
Mm-hmm.
What happens to the type after it's been used?
It's remelted and finds its way back in here ultimately in the form of pig.
Ultimately ends up in more type, right?
That's right.
Let's go in and watch some of the operation now. Thank you, Walter.
The mat is curved between two sheets of asbestos on a scorcher to be heated and somewhat dried. This process hardens the papier-mâché and toughens it. It is then positioned in the stereotype casting machine and all other parts of the mold clamped in and around it. The molten type metal is forced under pressure into the mold and onto the surface of the mat. The metal hardens quickly with a perfect image of the original type, but now on a curved cylindrical plate. The stereotype tube is placed on a cutter and the ends are trimmed. Sharp corners are planed down. It is then grooved to fit on the press, the inside being bored to leave an exact thickness so that all plates will print with the same pressure. If there are areas that are not supposed to ink and print the paper, it is taken to the routing machine and these surfaces shaved down to ensure clean printing. The stereotype plate is then ready to be mounted at a specific place on the press depending on the page number. The Longview Daily News has two high-speed presses, one capable of printing a 16-page paper, the other a 20-page one. These are giant precision machines controlled by electronic devices. They're built on an isolated foundation, actually an island, separated from the rest of the building. At the feed end, there are large rolls of newsprint, each one weighing more than 800 pounds and supplying about 4.5 miles of paper. Newsprint is constituted chiefly of wood pulp and has an absorbent surface designed to take a good impression of ink off the face of the stereotype plate at a high rate of speed. The fountains on the presses hold several gallons of ink. These are replenished from a large underground storage tank by electric pumps. Color printing is available and used regularly. This can be a 1 or 2 color operation or a complete 4-color process, each color being printed from a separate plate. The web of paper comes together at the delivery end, each page folding over the next. They are cut, then folded again and fall into an automatic conveyor. The two presses can be twinned so that the webs of paper in one press are fed into the folder of the other to make a 2-section newspaper. The pressmen operating the presses frequently put a folded paper off the conveyor and check for operation problems, such as ink flow and unreadable type. It takes continuous observation and supervision to keep the presses rolling. A 36-page paper can be delivered by these presses at the rate of 20,000 an hour. And it takes about 30 miles of newsprint to do it.
Meet now Leo Wallstad, the production superintendent here at the Daily News. Leo, how long does it take to turn out one single page from the time the copy reaches the linotype till the presses start rolling?
Well, Bill, that will vary depending on the page layout. We average 7.5 hours per page from the time we receive the copy in the composing room until the plates are ready for the presses.
How long does it take you to turn out a complete edition?
Well, there again it will vary because we range from 12 to 36 pages each day. We require 170 man-hours to produce our average 20-page papers. We have 24 printers and 6 pressmen who have produced more than 6,000 pages this year.
It's quite apparent to us as we've wandered around here today that they're all kept pretty busy. How long have you been with the newspaper?
35 years.
Could you enumerate some of the jobs that you've held in those 35 years?
Well, I started delivering papers in 1926, but spent most of my years in the mailroom until I graduated from high school in 1930. Then I went to work in the press room, becoming foreman in the early 40s, and assumed my present duties as production manager in 1948.
As production manager, what are your major responsibilities?
Well, seeing that all of the coordinated efforts of all the teams work out into a good finished product.
Tell us, if you had anything had it to do all over again, would you make any changes in your overall career, Leo?
No, I don't believe so. It's been most enjoyable, and a pleasure to have been associated with the firm for 35 years.
I'd guess it has been real fun. Thanks so much.
You are viewing Success Story, a series of on-the-spot telecasts originating each week somewhere in the great Northwest and brought to you live and direct as a public service by Richfield. Tonight's Success Story is originating from the newspaper plant of the Longview Daily News at 12th and Broadway in Longview, Washington. Concerned as they are with printing presses, paper and ink, it is entirely natural for a newspaper to be involved in commercial printing. The Longview Daily News operates a wholly owned affiliate, the Daily News Press, which has just recently moved into an all-new building directly behind the Daily News building. The Daily News Press specializes in nearly every aspect of commercial printing, from letterhead stationery, office and snap-out forms, to the printing and binding of catalogs and school yearbooks. Here in the composing room are the familiar linotype machines, as well as facilities for the hand setting of type. The press room has 3 letter presses for direct printing and 3 lithographic presses for an extremely popular type of printing, particularly for material with lots of pictures. The lithographic process is often called offset because a metal plate is inked but never comes in contact with the paper. A rubber cylinder called the blanket rolls over it instead and then transfers the ink to the paper. The bindery is an interesting part of the Daily News Press because of the great variety of machines. Here, printed items can be folded, stitched, stapled, and glued. There are machines for trimming, punching, perforating, die cutting, notching, and round cornering. Versatility and quality are both found at the Daily News Press, from calling cards to large advertising posters. It is the largest and most modern commercial printing plant in Southwest Washington. To create an exceptional daily paper providing an extensive coverage of the news is a costly process. The subscriber is charged only a minimal fee that pays less than 1/4 of the cost. The rest is financed through paid advertising, either in the classified section or in what is called display advertising in other parts of the paper. A complete publicizing program is provided the customer by the Daily News Advertising Department. The retail salesman and his creative talents are of great importance. He combines the many elements of type and pictures into a pleasing overall design that will attract attention and lead the eye to the most important parts. His job is to develop the rough idea into an advertisement that is interesting to look at and easy to read. After the rough is approved, the layout moves to the markup desk in a section of the composing room called Ad Alley. Modern printing utilizes many kinds of type with subtle variations in style as well as in size. The skilled technician selects a style and size appropriate to the advertising copy, the product, and the size of the ad. Some of the copy can be set by one of the 8 linotype machines, but the larger type will have to be set by hand. The mattresses are collected on a hand-held stick and, when complete, placed in the mold of the Ludlow casting machine. The molten type metal is cast, the stick released, and the slug is automatically dropped into a tray. A proof is pulled, entire display ad, checked, and then sent back to the advertiser for his approval. After corrections are made as needed, the ad is locked up and given to the compositor for incorporation into the makeup of the page chase that we observed earlier.
Let's have a few words now with Stan Fagerstrom, the Director of Advertising here. Stan, how many people are employed in the advertising department at the Daily News?
Within the 3 departments, classified, display, and dispatch, we have a total of 16 people.
How are they broken down?
There are 5 in classified, 5 in dispatch, and 6 in display.
You have quite a large classified section in the Daily News?
Bill, we call our classified section the marketplace of the people, and I think that's an accurate description. Last year, 1960, we published a total in excess of 192,000 individual ads.
How many display customers do you serve?
This will vary from time to time, ordinarily from 325 to 350.
You've been with the company a good many years, haven't you, Stan?
Yes, I started my 16th year in June.
You've held some very responsible jobs, too. Care to tell us about them?
I started as manager of the branch office in Kelso, later was classified advertising manager, outdoor editor, reporter, and now advertising director.
You in the newspaper business are faced with deadlines much as we are in the television business. Do you find them difficult to cope with at times?
Well, they get a little bit frantic at times, to be true, but this is one of the things that makes our profession very exciting.
I'll bet it is. Thanks very much, Stan.
Sure.
The methods used for publishing a daily newspaper are the same from day to day, but the product itself is entirely new and different. It is this day-to-day difference that makes up the creative side of newspaper publishing. It is the stated philosophy of almost every newspaper that it is dedicated to the prompt reporting of the news in as accurate, concise, and readable a form as possible. The Longview Daily News subscribes to this view, but in addition, since it is the only daily in the area, it must serve all the people equally well from a position independent of political bias. Under the direction of its editor-publisher, the Daily News staff is prepared to take issue as it is challenged, to champion a cause it believes in, and to promote the welfare of the community whenever and wherever there is opportunity. A popular daily newspaper must be able to keep up with the ever-broadening interests of its readers, their changes in tastes, their needs, and their problems. The legwork by talented reporters and correspondents takes them into every facet of life in the area as they try to find the facts and dig deep for the story behind the story. It is this background news that can affect our lives much more than the news break with the sensational headline. Some of the reporters have regular beats, as do the correspondents in outlying communities. This means they collect the day-by-day facts of life at the courthouse, the city halls, the fire and police departments, the Chamber of Commerce meetings, and so on. The editor's job is to make the assignments, edit the copy when it comes in, write the headlines for the stories, and plan the makeup for each page. The news editor keeps track of the vast amounts of copy that come in constantly by teletype from both Associated Press and United Press International. Only a very small part of this can be used each day. Wire photos are received almost as rapidly. One of the city editor's jobs is to select the pictures to be used. Beside the usual method of photo engraving used by most newspapers to provide pictures, the Daily News has a machine called the Scanagraver. This is a much faster process utilizing an electronic scanner. Any clear picture or snapshot is revolved under the scanner and the lights and darks are transposed into electronic impulses. These impulses actuate an etching device mounted over a plate of durable plastic. The etched engraving can then be pasted to the papier-mâché mat and used in the stereotype casting machine. Once the galley proofs are read and corrections made, checks must be made with the compositors to be certain the stories fit as planned. And most of this must be done before 1 o'clock. Each department has its own deadline through the morning hours. Inside pages earlier, front page last. When one day's work is done, the next day's work is started. Even the editor-publisher, John McClelland, Jr., is not free of deadlines. Besides writing editorials, he is one of 2 editor-publishers in the Northwest writing a daily column. It is called News and Views and appears in the left-hand column on the front page. By way of his own feature, he interprets the events of the day and provides a personal viewpoint as well as a background commentary of the news.
John, where did you get your journalism training?
I got my formal journalism training at Stanford University, worked on newspapers in California, came up here in 1940.
Have you always been interested in the newspaper business?
Oh, ever since high school. I've kind of grew up in the business.
How long have you been writing News and Views?
Well, long enough, according to some of our readers, but actually since 1940. That's 22 years.
It's quite apparent that you've recently undergone quite a sizable expansion here and remodeling. Does this happen frequently to the Daily News?
Well, frequently enough. About every 10 years we seem to need to remodel to add more space for the various departments. In fact, our latest remodeling has just been completed this week.
What, in your opinion, is the role of the newspaper in the community, John?
A newspaper has many roles, Bill, but the principal one is to keep the people informed and to interpret the news as it occurs day by day so they can fulfill their roles as citizens.
Now, what does the future look like in the field of journalism, newspaper business, for those who are still in school or are soon to be graduated from high school?
Well, Bill, we like to tell young people that there are many promising careers in journalism, and we urge people in high school who have some talent in journalism to go on to college and see if they have the aptitude to be journalists. There are openings in this business, and we want more good, talented people.
A college background is an absolute prerequisite, correct?
Well, not absolute, but it's very helpful.
Thank you, John. Thanks so much.
At 2 o'clock every weekday afternoon, the presses begin to roll. In less than 2 hours, 20,000 copies are on their way to newsstands and subscribers. As the papers come off the folder, they are lifted by automatic conveyor into the mailroom, where they're bundled into packs of 50. They are then taken by truck, car, or bus to pickup points to meet the hundreds of junior dealers who will deliver them to subscribers. The junior dealers are actually retail merchants. They buy the papers at wholesale and market them at retail. They must provide good service and keep accurate accounts if they're to succeed as young businessmen. Other bundles are taken to the bus depot to be transported to dealers in outlying communities. One of these is more than 80 miles from Longview. Some bundles travel by car over motor routes to be placed in boxes along highways and country roads. Altogether, the Longview Daily News travels more than 600 miles each day by car or bus. And this figure doesn't include the miles walked by delivery boys. A newspaper publishing plant is a great manufacturing establishment. The processes of molding metal type, fabricating paper mats, forming metal stereotype cylinders, and imprinting vast quantities of paper is only a part of our economic tradition utilizing mass production techniques. With national and international news just seconds away by teletype, the news services help us to know today's news today. All the creative work of a daily newspaper, geared as it is for speed and deadlines, is an intricate, fast-moving, and carefully timed process. It is an excellent example of American technology, ingenuity, and know-how. But it is in the tradition of a free press for a free people that it is supported by its readers. It is concerned with honest reporting, creative journalism, and a thoughtful interpretation of daily events, and as such, is the bulwark of a democracy. All of us should use the daily newspaper for a clearer understanding of life in our times, of history as it is being lived. In the First and 14th Amendments to the Constitution, we are given the right of free speech and a free press. It is a difficult ideal to live up to, but our newspapers regard it as a solemn duty to seek out and publish the truth without fear of reprisal. It is the only opportunity for all of us to know the facts on which we may base our decisions. Countries that have a free press also have a free people, and it is to this cause the Longview Daily News is dedicated.
Again, may I introduce the two John McClellans, the president and the editor-publisher of the paper. Gentlemen, our sincere thanks for inviting us to Longview. It's been a very enlightening experience to see behind the scenes at the Daily News.
Bill, my father and I want to thank Richfield and you on behalf of our whole staff for coming to Longview. We've enjoyed it.
Glad you did, John. Friends, we hope you'll join us 1 week from tonight. Our 3 live success story cameras will take you behind the scenes at the Memorial Coliseum in Portland. We think you'll find it exciting. Till then, good night.
Success Story, an on-the-spot report, is brought to you as a public service by Richfield, makers of 100-plus boron super-octane gasoline, Richfield Rich Heat heating oils, and a complete line of years ahead petroleum products. Next week at the same time, we'll bring you another success story with Bill Nielsen when our cameras will take you for a behind-the-scenes visit to the Memorial Coliseum. Be sure to join us then. Until then, this is Ivan Jones saying good night for Richfield.